Hey everybody, Driz Foskin here, and today I'm bringing you guys a GP Collinsville tournament report. Right above my head on the top left of the screen are a couple of talking points I want to get through in today's video, with focus on the deck choice and the tech cards that we played inside of it, the pre-event meta analysis and why we chose the deck, the feelings and results of day 1 and day 2, the post-event meta analysis, and then looking forward to GP Atlanta and Bengal 3. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So first and foremost, you can see that my list from GP Collinsville is pulled up on the right side of the screen, and I did indeed play Turbo Hook Lumia. So for those of you who don't know, Lumia has an automatic ability at the end of the turn where you choose a resonator on your side of the field, you remove it from the field, and you put it back into play, recovered. This causes all automatic abilities of that resonator to trigger again. So the main deck idea is to stick a hook, bounce your opponent's stones, find a way to tap down your hook, either if it's by tapping it for mana with the Feedstings Monocle or swinging with it, and then at the end step, blinking it again, hooking your opponent, and then ultimately removing them from the game, or keep locking them out of the game rather, by having them on 0 stones and having a 10-10 beater every turn when they can't play cards. Very powerful deck. We first saw it pop up in GP Tokyo, and from there the deck has kind of gotten popularity because it seems to be able to beat things like Fox and Control, which was very prominent in the meta. Cat Y. So anyway, let's go ahead and talk about the list. We've got the 4 of Sacred Elf, pretty self-explanatory. That along with Melfi's are pretty much staples in any type of ramp deck. The difference is Melfi is a very powerful card because it has quick cast, so it can be played on your opponent's end step. She also has an automatic ability that allows her to blank damage from any target J resonator on the field, provided she is the second card that is played that turn. This is a very relevant ability, especially since we play a lot of quick cast cards. Just like the 2-drop Feasting, we play Seal of Wind and Light, we play Wall of Wind, we play Faria Summon, we play Rapid Growth, and we play Bear Magic. All of these cards have quick cast, some of them have Remnant, so the ability to trigger Melfi, actually you can also play another Melfi on top of a Melfi, and both Melfis trigger. So we do have a lot of quick cast options to activate our Melfis, and so very relevant ability. The next card, Tama, it's a 4 of. You need draw power in any deck, and this is the main source of draw power for us. We do have a lot of cards that tutor cards out of the deck, specifically Faria Summon and Kaguya's Moonbeam Butterfly, but sometimes you just want to pull the extra card to hand. A 1 mana to possibly bring a hook into hand when you need it is pretty good. So Tama, 4 of in any deck that needs draw power, very self-explanatory. She's also somewhat spot removal because you can banish to deal 200 damage to a target resonator. So yeah, very worthwhile card. The next card is Feasting, the Fate Spinning Winds. This is a 2-drop 6/6 that can be quick casted onto your opponent's, or on the end step of your opponent's turn, or any point really. And her enter ability says that when this card enters your field, choose a target resonator on your side of the field and return it to its owner's hand. Now this card has a lot of synergy with Melfi's, Captain Hook's, Slayer of the Overlord Prisha, just because you can bounce them to your hand to evade any type of removal and then recast them the next turn. To go one step further, you could actually use it to bounce a Melfi to hand, so you could tap your Melfi to use the mana to pay for the Feasting, bounce the Melfi to hand, and if you have 2 mana open, you could flash that Melfi back in and blank something out. And that's very powerful. She also has an Inheritance ability, so Inheritance, for those of you who don't know, is an activated ability of resonators in your hand. You pay the cost and you get the ability. You can inherit in something for +6/+6, which gives us access to some really cool combat tricks. It allows us to trade up with bigger J resonators like Valentina 2.0, Guiber, any type of deck that really runs off their J ruler. If we need that extra damage, we can get there. And in addition to the Inheritance ability that gives +6/+6, it also pulls the 1 of Feasting Monocle that we play in our deck. So Feasting Monocle, you can bestow it, and then it allows you to tap that resonator that it's bestowed to produce any color. A very relevant ability when your opponent also has big dudes on the board and you don't want to trade your hooks for their resonators, or even, for example, if you're swinging in with the hook and they would block with the Chimera and you're not able to pump your hook, you don't really want to lose out on it. So the Feasting Monocle gives you a way to tap that resonator down and continue to blink it at the end of turn. So we play Cancel Spells, 4 Seal of Wind and Light, 3 Wall of Wind. Pretty self-explanatory on what these cards do. Originally, Wall of Wind was at 2, but we felt that 3 was a little bit better, especially because we played the one of Sha Wujing, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We play 4 hooks in the main deck. Some of us were running 3, but 3 or 4 doesn't really make a difference. You really just want to make sure you're able to see your hooks. And we do have a lot of ways to see the hooks, but one more for consistency's sake. We play 3 Kaguya Moonbeam Butterflies and 3 Faria Summons. So originally it was a 4-2 split for Kaguya Moonbeam Butterfly. However, we went to 3 and 3 just because it didn't really feel good bringing in a big drop with Kaguya's Moonbeam Butterfly. While you could do it if you were locked out of blue stones for whatever reason and you didn't have a hook in hand, you really just wanted to drop a hook because it was very safe to. You could search for it out of your deck. However, I found myself using this card more to find Melfi's or Feathsings or Tamas, things that have automatic abilities as well that trigger immediately. But yeah, you do have the 3 Faria summons to search for your hooks and search for any resonance. So there's a lot of tutor ability in this deck and a lot of shuffle. The one thing that made Kaguya's Moonbeam Butterfly also really powerful is that in our sideboard, which is a little bit down below, our sideboard had a lot of 1 and 2s for additions, and the ability to tutor your deck and bring the addition into the field, especially low-cost additions, made it very viable and very helpful against matchups like Dark Alice and Val 2.0. So the next card we have is the 3 of Slayer of the Overlord Prisha, who was honestly an insane card to play. This card kind of puts us ahead in the mirror, as well as helped us with any deck that was playing some type of 1-drop, any type of ramp. Anything that played dorks. When it comes into the field, that card and target J-Res that your opponent controls fight each other. And then it's also a mana sink, so you can pump it in the chase in response to the ability to make sure that your dude actually kills theirs and doesn't die. In the control matchup, you could, if you found this card late and you had enough stones, and you haven't won by then, you could play this card and you could start trading up for Risas and Melders. Obviously that requires a lot more mana, but it is a possibility. The next card also helps us get there. It's the one of Rapid Growth, which it's a quick cast spell. Target J Resin gains +4/+4, and then it has Remnant. Honestly, a very surprising card. We originally had 3 Bear Magics, but Ryan suggested we cut down to 2 Bear Magics and Rapid Growth. Because we're green heavy, there's no reason to not play this card, and the amount of combat tricks with it are insane. For 1 mana, you could pump your Prisha to an 8/9 and straight up kill Risas. You could pump your Captain Hooks, you can pump your Lumia, you can pump anything in your deck, really. It was a very surprising card, and it was very useful. And ended up winning us, ended up winning me a couple of games in Swiss. With things like against Val 2.0, the ability to have Rapid Growth in hand, pump my Captain Hook before untap, and then untap and pump my hook again when I have a Barrier of Shadows on the field. It made it so that my opponent couldn't use their Regalia to pump their Valentina, and ultimately won me the game because the Valentina would die. The next card is the one of Prisha, Pursuant of Exploding Flame. Excuse me. This card also really strong. I felt that this card needed to go into the deck, even though a lot of people seem to have known about this tech. The fact that it had swiftness and precision gave you an out to Tsukiyomi Noble, which some of the lists were playing, not everybody. And Tsukiyomi Noble, which I'll talk about a little bit later as one of the cards that didn't make the cut for my list. It did shut off mana dorks. It was powerful, and it was kind of annoying. So this was my out to Tsukiyomi Noble because she has swiftness, first strike, and precision. The ability to give her flying as well made her very relevant because she couldn't be chump blocked. Next we have the one of Sha Wujing. This card was actually insane, and a lot of people didn't see it coming. Sha Wujing makes all chance your opponent plays cost 1 more. This is to include any card that is set in the chance standby area. So against control, extremely powerful card. This card forced your opponent to play on inefficient mana, which is exactly what you wanted. When your opponent's playing 2 mana to kill a mana dork, and you've got 2 dorks on the field, well, I mean, it's just not good for them, because now you have access to that ramp, you have access to those counter spells, you have access to continue to ramp because you continue to have those dorks. So Sha Wuxing, on top of that, being somewhat crippling to control in multiples, he's an 8/7 body, which for 3 mana is actually pretty strong. And if your opponent can't deal with him soon enough, I mean, he's getting in for 8 every turn. So it only takes a little bit of reach from either the Prisha or one successful hook to really lock out the game. And then finally we have 2 Bear Magics. Bear Magics worked really well with the Slayer of the Overlord Valentina, or excuse me, Slayer of the Overlord Prishas. It also, again, allowed for combat tricks. It was good against stealth in some forms. I would really side this card out against stealth, but there would be opportunities where your opponent would flip Riza Melder, or Riza Melder, or whatever the case is, and you could bear one of the 2 to ensure that your dude stayed alive. This, in addition to pumping your own creatures with either Inheritance or Rapid Growth, or if it was the Prisha, you could just dump your mana. It really allowed you to stabilize better against control. So that's our main deck of 40 cards. Let's go over the stones real quick. So in the stone deck, we have 4 Deepwoods, 4 Gusting Skies, 1 Prisha's Memoria, and 1 Blasting Waves. Originally, when the deck was playing Tsukiyomi Noble, we had 6 green-white sources. So it was 4 Gusting Skies, 2 Prisha's Memorias, and then Deepwoods. But we found that the ability to play the Pursuant Prisha is really strong, but then we also didn't want to lock ourselves out of Judgment if we needed it. So we only ran 1 green-red source. Now, while that's extremely inconsistent, because you have a 1 in 9 chance at any, 1 in 9 and then, scaling down at any point in the game, when you did hit that early greenstone, it really did help you, because it gave you the option to have a 10/10 Swiftness J-Resonate, or J-Ruler, that could blink another dude. So yeah, that's the stone deck. Let's go ahead and talk about the sideboard that I played. So in my sideboard, we have a Charlotte, 3 Sha Wuxings, a Barrier Seal, 2 Barrier of Shadows, 2 Heavenly Gusts, 2 Windsecluded Refuge, 2 Prison of the Lunar Lake, 1 Fairy of Sacred Vision, and 1 Bedivere, the Restorer of Souls. So where do we start? Sha Wuxing. Again, like I explained, Sha Wuxing was extremely powerful in control, and in game 1, if you didn't win the control matchup in game 1, you would pretty much guaranteed to win it in games 2 and 3, because you would have multiple Sha Wuxings, and you would also slide into Charlotte. So Charlotte and Sha Wuxing was our control package. You'd pull out the Lumia, and the reason why is because control plays a lot of hand removal and discard and Soul Hunt and Lapis's Darkstorm, and although I didn't see it often, they were playing Scorns and Nameless Mist. Charlotte had allowed you to refill your hand once your opponent picked apart your hand with all of their removal, because it would generally mean that they were also out of cards, and then you would just flip, gain 5 life, draw 5 cards, then you can actually play the game again. Sha Wuxing, again, very powerful. You wanted more of these cards in control, so the ability to energize, drop a turn 2 Sha Wuxing, and then turn 3 Sha Wuxing, and then just lock your opponent out of the game, it's insane. And then again, he's an 8/7 body, he's dealing some crazy damage, so there was no reason to not have 4 of this card between the main and side. The next card is Barrier Seal. I didn't find myself siding this card in too much, but the matchups that I would have been bringing in were Fox and Dark Alice. If you find it early enough in Dark Alice, and it should be okay because you can Moonbeam it out, but if you can find it early enough with Dark Alice, you can almost ensure that she can never flip until she removes this card. And then in Fox, it really helps because it removes the Killing Stones from the game. They have no way of shuffling him back in, and ultimately once you deal with 4 Chimeras, you pretty much seal the game in your favor. The next card, Barrier of Shadows, we ran 2 of those. Only really brought this card in against Valentina 2.0, and you really wanted to find him early. There was actually a point in the game, actually a point in the tournament, against my round 4 opponent. I played against Val 2.0 and I lost 1-2, where I opened up double barrier, and unfortunately that was post mulligans, and I didn't see a Kage's Moving Butterfly to cheat anything in, which wouldn't have actually done me any good because I had no way to shuffle it back into my deck. So the card was very hit or miss. I did play a Valentina 2.0 in round 7, that I did win because I saw the early barrier shadows and had the ability to play them between either Malfi or Moonbeam Butterfly. So really the only matchup I brought it in against, but it was very powerful. The next card, Heavenly Gust, another Val 2.0 card. Because it has quick cast, it can trigger your Melfies, and that's extremely relevant to blanking out Val 2.0 when she wants to flip. And then once again, if you torrent it and destroy all of her Regalia and her Wind-Secluded Refuge, it just kind of puts her in a bad position. The next card, 2 of Wind-Secluded Refuge. I mean, it's a pretty self-explanatory card. You could bring this in against control. I didn't find myself sliding this card in a lot. I brought it in maybe 1 game in the 3 matches that I played against control. I found I didn't really need it. But you would have it in to protect your Sha Wujings and draw a card. I mean, 2 mana draw cards, okay, but then the ability to cancel an effect that targets one of your Sha Wujings or another Resonator that you control. It's really strong, but I didn't see a whole lot of usage out of this card in the event. The next cards we have are the 2 Prison and the Lunar Lakes. So prisons were very strong. There's a lot of things in the meta that utilize automatic abilities, and in the mirror, when you're playing against hooks or when you're playing against stealth, bringing this card in was very important, and it was extremely useful. Unfortunately, I only played the mirror twice, and we were all on the same list because it was the group that I came with. So I didn't see a whole lot of usage of prison outside of the mirror, because in stealth I was playing the Sha Wujing package and I was already so ahead that my Wallowinds were insane, and that if they didn't have mana after setting their Lunar Lakes, it didn't really make a difference because they couldn't activate them regardless. So I didn't really see a whole lot of usage out of this card, but I think any deck that's playing blue wants to be playing Lunar Lake, so just to have that option there, just to be able to threaten the Lunar Lake, is very important in this game. The next card we have is the Fairy of Sacred Vision. I never boarded this card in. There was never an opportunity where I really needed it. Again, because it can blow up standbys, you could. I didn't play against a whole lot of Prison and Lunar Lake because I only hit the mirror twice against 2 people that I knew who it was, and I don't know, just it didn't seem good enough when I had the Sha Wujing package. It didn't feel like I needed it because I had the extra Wallowinds to cancel their prisons and anything else that they were setting that weren't races and melders. So I never bought that card in, but it was there just in case. The same thing with Bedivere. So Bedivere, 2 mana, when it enters the field, remove target Resonator with 1,000 attack or less from the game. That card was actually more of a Fox Feeding card. We really wanted an answer to Gwyber and all the Chimeras, and he's blinkable, so it seemed like a really good idea, but I also never brought this card in. I played against a whole lot of control on day 1, and so Bedivere saw no usage throughout the entire day. So let's go ahead and talk about a couple of cards that didn't quite make the cut. So I've got these tabs right here. So the first one is Tsukiyomi Noble. We originally were playing this card because in the mirror, when your opponent drops the Tsukiyomi Noble and you can't tap your mana dorks to produce mana, it gets pretty crippling. And then if you're not playing removal, which the deck plays no removal outside of canceling, you have no way to deal with it. So it made it really hard for the matchup if you weren't playing the Tsukiyomi Noble. We substituted this card for different outs. We played the Priscia Pursuit of Exploding Flame. We also played Bear Magic. You could pre-untap Bear Magic that card and then drop a Priscia, kill it. Or you could just Bear Magic it so that you could use your mana dorks for the turn. So we had different ways to play around it. We had outs to this card. And the double white made it really hard because you really, like, double white is very consistent in the deck with 5 sources, even more so with 6. But you really want to hit early blue stones. So we wanted to try and kind of take the burden off of having so much green-white and having 2 shock rocks, and went for different options. The next card we played around with was a Spectating Magician. So this is a 4 mana 4/8. When it enters the field, put target spell chant or spell chant instant from your graveyard to your hand. If its total cost is 1, you can play it without paying its cost instead of playing it from your, or excuse me, instead of putting it into your hands. So we were speculating about playing this card. It seemed decent, but for 4 mana, 4/8, like the body's pretty low, it's pretty small. And there weren't, I mean, we are playing one cost cards. We're playing Rapid Growth and Bear Magic, and I think that's the only 2 that we are playing. So it really didn't seem worth it to play with this card, even though the idea was kind of floated around a little bit. We decided against it because it just wasn't good enough. The same thing with this next card. We also considered the Time Gazer Elf, which is a 4 mana 6/8. When this card enters or leaves your field for a non-field zone, draw a card. This card kind of felt a little win more because, I mean, when you enter the field, 4 mana 6/8. Okay, it gives you something to do with 4 mana, but I think that mana is better held up playing with cancel spells or Malfeas or Featsings. But when this card enters the field, it draws you 1 card, which Tama already did. And then if you're constantly blinking this every turn, like, yeah, you would draw an insane amount of cards, but I don't know, it wasn't impactful enough. When it really hits the board, it doesn't really do a lot. So that 4 mana was probably best spent somewhere. Just felt kind of, again, win more. And the ability to look at the top 3 cards of your main deck and put them back in any order would have been relevant, but we weren't playing any Moonwill. So this card was just, you know, not quite there to make the cut. So that was our list for GP Collinsville, the Turbo Hook Lumia build. And let's go ahead and talk about how we brought this deck with the intentions of it doing much better than it did. Well, what I mean to say is going into the event, on the card right there, we really were discussing what kind of meta we would have. The reason why we were floating with the idea of Lumia was because back in the Invitational in December, there was originally the idea that it was going to be a Fox meta. Fox was very powerful. Nobody had answers to it. It beat Featsing, which was, before that, what was considered the strongest deck in the format. So Lumia beat Fox, ergo Lumia is probably the right choice. We were playing around with the idea of mainboarding Charlotte and going with a Charlotte-based deck, and then also playing Turbo Featsing, but we ultimately did decide to play the Lumia. And I mean, it was a good story. It was a good choice. Lumia was a very solid ruler. The deck was very solid. It was pretty consistent, which in Force of Will is something that you really need. Ultimately, though, looking at the statistics of GP Collinsville, there were a lot more Lumia players than expected, and unfortunately, none of them really did all that well. I guess they just weren't as prepared as they should have been, which happens. But anyway, going into day 1 and the tournament as a whole, I mean, we felt, again, pretty confident on the deck. Myself, I ended up at 5-2-1, placing 22nd, losing my top 8 winning in to Ryan Miles, who was also on the same deck as I was, plus or minus a card or 2. We all kind of tweaked it to our personal preferences. But in the 48 Lumias that were at Collinsville, I want to say our 2 were the only ones that were at the top tables in the last round. Everybody else was either playing Val 2.0 or some form of control or that crazy Allosaurus deck. And then there was some Featsing there at the top tables as well. Featsing actually did surprisingly well at the event and ultimately won the tournament, which puts me to the post-meta analysis, or the post-event meta-analysis rather, which I feel, with people seeing that Featsing is still a very powerful deck, very threatening, and still needs to be remembered, that people are either going to go back to Fox or jump on the Featsing train. But it's really hard to say, because if people go back to Fox, then it just becomes another meta of Fox losing out to Lumia and then Featsing being pushed out of the meta entirely. Now, if people go back to Featsing, yeah, then it's just a vicious cycle, I think, of whether or not people are going to stick more to Featsing or people are going to predict people sticking to Featsing and then go to Fox. I think in either situation, people end up on Fox, or Fox becomes the best again. I don't know. It's weird. It's something to work with. It's something to think about. And this all kind of ties into GP Atlanta and Bengal 3 because we do have Bengal 3 coming up later this week, as well as GP Atlanta being next weekend. So with the spoilers already being completed and Jordan confirming that there are no more spoilers, we don't know what cards are being reprinted from the Grim cluster. And we don't know if those cards are going to affect the meta any. We don't know if any decks are going to be viable once again. There is some hope, some speculation that if cards like Split Heaven and Earth are reprinted or Flame of the Outer World are reprinted, that some type of aggro control can be viable again, which I think is something that's really necessary because aggro has not been in a good spot for a while. It's just been losing out to combo, it's been losing out to control, which isn't how the Trinity is supposed to work, but we'll have to see. And we really won't have any further information until Bengal 3 comes out. But thank you, everybody. That was my GP Collinsville tournament report. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.